morning, metalheads of the internet, and welcome to a new episode of the Metal Meltdown! And today, we are looking at all of the albums that I missed in the month of June 2020. And frankly, it's a big list with a lot of big names, so let's not waste any fucking time today. Let's get right into it. Let's start with Hindsight from Emmure, released June 26 via Sharptone Records. And it's, fucking Emmure. You know what? I'll actually start with some genuine praise. I think that Emmure's decision to finally, fully indulge in their rapcore and nu metal influences on Hindsight was a great idea. These are genres that have noticeably influenced Emmure's particular brand of edgy, boneheaded deathcore, but they've never fully embraced these styles the way they have on Hindsight. Not only does it all seamlessly blend together, but it gives Emmure a little bit of an extra edge to stand out within the deathcore hordes. I'll even concede that this is a pretty well-produced record. The guitars, the bass, the drums all have a nice, meaty heft to them, and there are lots of really cool, spooky sound effects found across the record that give this album a lot of mystery, a lot of spice, a lot of tension, a lot of anxiety. It does seem to borrow a lot, perhaps a little bit too much, from the most recent Code Orange record Underneath, but hey, if you're gonna take, you may as well take from one of the hottest fucking bands in metal, so I'll let it slide. And yeah, I guess that's where the praise for this record ends, because as usual, the thing that derails this Emmure record is the thing that derails ultimately every Emmure record, regardless of what else is in it. Frankie Palmieri. It would be one thing if he was just a generic deathcore singer, but he's also a horrible songwriter. Frankie's entire strategy in regards to lyricism and songwriting has always boiled down to, how do I piss off the largest amount of people possible while remaining friendly enough for the deathcore masses? And Hindsight is no different. All he's trying to do is poke, prod, and intentionally offend anyone who would dare cross his path. All he's trying to do is get knee-jerk reactions out of people. He's not interested in any real substance, in any real meaning. He's basically a white trash 12-year-old kid who just listened to Eminem for the first time, trapped within the body of a relatively successful 34-year-old man. Like, seriously, dude, you're 34. Grow the fuck up. I'm sure that the Emmure loyalists, the die-hard fans, will find plenty to enjoy on this. I'm sure they will rush to this album's defense. I'm sure they'll just be like, You're a fucking hater, dude. Whatever, bro. You're snowflake. Triggered. And, good for you. Whatever. I don't even really hate this record. I'm just tired of Frankie as a fucking songwriter, as a frontman, as a human being. I'm tired. Next up, A Wonderful Life from Mushroomhead, released June 19th via Napalm Records. Another incredibly edgy nu metal record. Yikes. Really hoping this isn't setting some kind of pattern for what the rest of 2020 is gonna be like, if I gotta deal with two of these records in a row in one video. And unfortunately, unlike Hindsight, I don't even really have it in me to muster up anything positive to say about this record. I think A Wonderful Life through and through is just crap. Dated, bloated, clumsy, overproduced fucking crap from a band that at this point is on a quest to prove just how irrelevant they are to rock and heavy metal music. There is not a single appealing element or moment on this record. It's incredibly pretentious. It thinks it's the greatest thing in the world. It's way too fucking long. There's no need for any nu metal record to be 71 minutes long, let alone a nu metal record as fucking clueless as this. If I at any point had worked on this record, I would be outright embarrassed. And if I were Mushroomhead, I would seriously consider restarting a feud with Slipknot, because at this point, that's the only way y'all are gonna stay fucking relevant if this is the kind of music you're making. Next up, Hell Will Come For Us All, released June 12th via Nuclear Blast Records. I remember when the promo tracks were coming out, a lot of fans were upset that the band had abandoned their more sci-fi, cosmic, alien core sound and concept, that they were going for something a lot more hellish, a lot more down-to-earth, a lot more gritty, a lot more poignant, musically pulling more inspiration from Diarda's Murder and Fit for an Autopsy. But I personally prefer this approach. I think that this is a pretty heavy record. I think it's a pretty honest record, a pretty transparent one, a pretty poignant one considering the time of its release and considering some of the themes across the record. Is it perfect? No, I think the bass for most of these songs is still a little meat and potatoes, and there's definitely more that Aversions Crown can do to put a little bit more of their own unique stamp on everything. But all things considered, I didn't really think this was that bad of an album. I would dare say I kind of enjoyed it. I don't know, shoot me. I think they made a lot of smart decisions with this record, and I'm even a little curious to see what they might do in the future with this new concept. Next up, a self-titled EP from Firstborne, released June 19th independently. This happens to be a brand new supergroup, if you will, featuring a couple respectable names. You've got Girish Pradhan of Girish and the Chronicles, an Indian hard rock band. You've got Myron, a Los Angeles-based guitarist, shred performer. You've got James Lomenzo as well, who's worked extensively with White Lion and Zakk Wylde. Some of you may also remember him from a brief stint performing with Megadeth in the late 2000s. But most impressively, we've got the one and only Chris Adler, formerly of Lamb of God. An interesting lineup to say the least, and I think they've got a pretty interesting little sound here too. You know, they're playing some pretty catchy traditional hard rock heavy metal, kind of giving me some like early mid-90s Megadeth vibes, like some kind of bridging point between Countdown to Extinction and Euthanasia. I like the melodies. I like a lot of the guitar work. It's cool to hear Myron doing something a little bit more traditional, a little bit more rock and roll in comparison to the weird shit he normally puts out as a solo artist. And of course, Chris Adler. You know, Chris Adler sounds fucking great. You know, it's nice to hear him doing something not nearly as intense as the stuff we're used to hearing him doing, not just through Lamb of God, but also through Protest the Hero and Megadeth. Yeah, color me impressed. This is kind of a neat EP. Looking forward to seeing what this band does in the future with a full studio album. Next up, Angel and Abyss Redux EP from Spirit Adrift, released June 19th via $20 spin. Now don't get too excited, folks. This isn't really brand new Spirit Adrift. What we've got here is an acoustic version of the track Angel and Abyss, and a couple covers from Rocky Erickson and Jimi Hendrix. Not that that's a bad thing, but if you're rushing into this going, oh man, brand new Spirit Adrift, can't wait for the new album. Sorry, from what I understand, this EP isn't really even supposed to represent what we can expect from a new Spirit Adrift album. In fact, if my inside source Ty Tilley is correct, this is basically the polar opposite of what we can expect to see on the next Spirit Adrift record. So don't come in here expecting some fucking super heavy new music. Once you get past that, this EP's pretty cool. I like the softer, almost unplugged approach to Angel in the Abyss, and I like these covers as well, especially The Wind Cries Mary. I think Spirit Adrift add their own soulful flavor to this that I think works really well. I especially like that all the proceeds from this EP will be going directly into the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. That's awesome. That's cool. Good job, guys. Hard to say if this will be for everyone, especially if, again, you're rushing into this like, fuck yeah, some new fucking Spirit Adrift. But hey, after listening to so many super big albums as of late, I just needed like a little bit of a palate cleanser, and this did just fine, and at the same time I was able to give to a good cause, so I'm personally satisfied. Next up, another EP, a self-titled one in fact, from a band that I'm assuming is pronounced Baader-Meinhof? I don't fucking know. I'm also not entirely sure when exactly this was released, to be honest. Most articles I'm reading say this came out pretty much at the beginning of June. There are others that say this came out on May 20th. Here's what we do know. This EP is 3 tracks of crusty, lo-fi, minimalistic, black metal performed by the one and only Ghostmane, a hip-hop performer who has regularly injected hard rock, heavy metal, and extreme music influence into his sound, and in the past has even contributed to these genres with some other EPs, some of which we've actually talked about here on the Metal Meltdown before. And man, this thing is abrasive. There are a lot of really creepy acoustic passages, a lot of really noisy walls of pure blackened hysteria and anxiety, a lot of tortured screams, ferocious drumming, ambient electronic keyboards and soundscapes dwindling in the back, providing sharp contrast. I gotta say, I really enjoy this. I wasn't really familiar with this particular project from Ghostman before, but I'm definitely going to be on the lookout for more of their material in the near future. If I may make an appeal to Baader-Meinhof and Ghostman right now, please tell me there's a full album of this on the way. Please, drop everything you're doing, because I want to hear more of this. Please, please, please and thank you. Next up, Rex from Vampire, released June 19th via Century Media Records. This is cool. This is so cool, I actually wish I had given a full review to this album. It's some really cool, melodic, blackened thrash kind of shit from Sweden. It's spooky, it's nasty, it's violent, kind of feels like the bridging point between like very early Skeleton Witch with Tane, maybe some In Solitude or Early Tribulation. The production, the sound mix on this thing, just fucking fantastic. Oh my god, like, oh, every single riff is dynamic. It's razor sharp, it's in your face. The bass and the drums just sound fucking massive. Love that too. I think the vocals are probably the weakest aspect. They're not bad. They're just not nearly as impressive or as unique as every other component of this record. I do think that unfortunately does bring it down a bit, but regardless, I did thoroughly enjoy this. Had I gone through with a proper review, I may have even given this like a high 3.5 out of 5 or a low 4 out of 5, somewhere there. Either way, it comes with a very sincere and enthusiastic recommendation, particularly if you're looking for something a little bit more fun and a little bit more raucous in your modern black metal. Next up, the Squalor EP from Trash Talk, released June 19th via the band's own Trash Talk Collective. I feel like we should retroactively start a drinking game. Rewind this whole video and take a shot every time I say EP. This is the band's first release since a previous EP in 2016, and interestingly, it's their first made with one sole producer. That one sole producer being Kenny Beats, an in-demand hip-hop producer who recently made a prolific record earlier this year with Denzel Curry. Interesting little crossover happening there, but don't worry, Trash Talk has not gone hip-hop. This is still very much some very ferocious, very in-your-face, very abrasive kind of crossover thrash, hardcore punk. Very metallic, very gritty, very angry. In true hardcore fashion, the entire EP, even with 5 tracks, ends at a pretty sharp 8.5 minutes, with the shortest song even clocking in at an almost grindcore length with 55 seconds of time. Everything sounds and feels great. I'm really impressed by Kenny Beats as well. He's not the kind of person I would really expect to go off and make like an underground hardcore crossover thrash EP. But hey, good on him doing something different, and I'm curious to see what he brings to the table, if he's brought back on perhaps a new Trash Talk EP, perhaps another full-blown record. We'll see. But for now, this is a fun little blast of fun hardcore energy. Check it out. Next up, the debut EP from death metal supergroup Living Gate, entitled Deathlust. If you had told me maybe a couple months back that members of Yob, Oathbreaker, and Amun-Ra were going to join forces to create like this very brutal underground little death metal blast, just something absolutely disgusting and gnarly, I might have told you that you're full of yourself. But here we are. That's exactly what they've done, and it's kind of cool. Unfortunately, Living Gate lacked the originality and ambition seen in any of those aforementioned bands, and even within the realms of death metal are playing things pretty safe, pretty vanilla, not really doing anything all that adventurous on this debut EP. But you know, death metal is one of those genres that if you hit everything just right, that kind of stuff doesn't really matter, and I think they've hit everything just right here. A lot of big bruising riffs, a lot of nasty vocals. The production on this is really great, feels very much in line with a lot of modern death metal out there, namely bands like Tomb Mold, Outer Heaven, Witch Vomit. Curious to see what this band could do in the future, particularly if they do decide to indulge in some of the more adventurous elements that define the aforementioned Yob, Amun-Ra, and Oathbreaker. But hey, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. For now, this is a pretty fun, tasty slice of guilty pleasure underground death metal, one that I'm sure the death metal hordes will very much appreciate. Next up, a self-titled album from Stygian Crown, released June 19th via Cruz del Sur Music. And I'm digging this record. Maybe not as much as the rest of y'all, because I've gotten a lot of requests to review this, so I have to assume that it's mildly popular within the realm of doom metal right now, but nonetheless, I am digging it. I think it sounds really great. You know, I love that sound mix. All the riffs sound fucking gigantic. I love how confident everyone sounds. I love how determined everyone sounds. Lead vocals are really great on this thing as well. But as far as the music itself is concerned, this is just a little bit too meat and potatoes for my personal liking, sticking a little too closely to the tropes and conventions of traditional doom metal, making this for me a somewhat predictable and repetitive affair. Like, the only time I really feel like I'm hearing something different, hearing something a little bit more unique from Stygian Crown would be within the closing track, 2 Coins for the Ferryman, where we hear some strings, some more progressive elements. But this isn't really a lot, and again, it's at the end of the album. If you love classic Candlemass, Solitude Aeternus, or you're just not very picky with your doom metal altogether, this'll do the job, but I'm personally looking for something a little bit more spicy and a little bit more clever. Next up, Gluttony from Foetal Juice, released June 12th via Gorehouse Productions. And this is pretty interesting for death metal right here, because what we've got is an objectively gruesome record, obsessed with everything gross, squirmy, weird, and cringy, to the point where they literally open the album on a track called Take Your Face for a Shit. And yet, sonically, it's actually a pretty clean record. It's very transparent. It's very balanced. It's, dare I say, a very well-produced record. Like, musically, you'd look at this and go, oh, this kind of feels in line with maybe something like Fetid or even Pissgrave. But production-wise, this is like really good professional shit. This is on par with, I feel like, what you'd hear from the Black Dahlia Murder or Cannibal Corpse. And it manages to do this without compromising brutality, without compromising how inherently kind of fucked up the whole thing is. That's really fucking impressive, to be honest with you. Normally, death metal albums, especially nowadays, go either one way or the other. Very rarely do they find some kind of meeting point unless they are a very high-profile band. But Foetal Juice kind of did. And I think it makes for one of the strongest underground death metal records I've heard so far in 2020. And I would highly recommend this to anyone that's just looking for a really fucking mean blast of fucking death metal right now. Which I imagine is a lot of you, because y'all death metal maniacs can never seem to get enough. Speaking of which, another death metal album, this one being Entropic Reflections Continuum Dimensional Unravel from Voidceremony, released June 26th via $20 spin. A lot of people talking about this record. Decibel Magazine even said it was one of the best death metal albums of the year so far. And I guess I'm going to have to come in and be the bad guy and say that it's good, but not quite that good. It's here. It's not here. Y'all think it's here. It's actually here. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Pretty cool musically, you know, kind of reminds me of Blood Incantation, some more modern Horrendous, with some classic death metal flavors thrown in there as well. I even pick up on some like early 90s Death, Morbid Angel, even some of the weirder aspects of early Voivod, dare I say, particularly in the album's production and visual aesthetic. That's cool. That's great. Having fun with that. But I do think the songs are a little bit bloated. I think some of them run on a little bit longer than they need to. A lot of these tracks you could trim maybe a whole minute off of and lose nothing. In fact, they'd become tighter, they'd become sharper. And on top of that, I just think the vocals are like really one-dimensional and generic. I mean, by no means terrible, but like it doesn't exactly add much to this music, you know? It's like if the fucking Cookie Monster was singing on top of like some really crazy tech death. If I were to review it, I probably would have given it a 3 out of 5. Pretty damn enthusiastic one for that matter. But to y'all who are saying this is one of the best death metal albums of the year, nay, one of the best albums of the year, period, I think you're definitely jumping the fucking gun. And finally, let's finish this off with one more fucking EP. Holy shit, it's like every band in June was like, EPs are the way to go, man. This one is called Tired and True, and it's from a band that I believe is pronounced Tia Carrera. I don't fucking know, I'm white. Here's what I do know. This thing's fucking great. Super tasty, super bangin' instrumental stoner rock with a little bit of a psychedelic, even Latin flair to it. Perfect for driving down desert roads with the top down. Perfect for chugging something with a fucking slice of pineapple in it. Perfect for parties, fun, and pure rock and roll summer spirit. I love this thing. Not really sure what makes this an EP at 37 minutes long, but fuck it. Whatever. Call it what you want. It's badass. Honestly, I think you'd have to be a pretty cold, cynical, and stuck-up person not to enjoy this on some level. It is just such a banging little piece of modern hard rock. I love this. It's got heart, it's got soul, it's got flavor, and I highly, 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 highly recommend it. And I think that's it. I can't really think of anything else. I can't really think of any other albums, any other EPs. I think we're good. If I've missed anything, obviously y'all will let me know. So yeah, let's just cut it right here. Thank you for watching. Make sure you press subscribe. Stay tuned because not long after this video is live, we will be discussing the best albums of 2020 so far. So stick around, and as always, you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.